Everyone, and welcome to the Wealthy LaLa Show with myself, Laurie Laursen. How are you doing today on this fun Monday, show 126? How does it get any better than that? I am so incredibly grateful to be here today. There's just, oh gosh, I would say most days, but there's just some days when I go to do these shows and my gratitude is just so present. Like I'm just so aware of it. And today's show, like I know today is like a curious Monday. So what was I curious about? What did I want to talk about that I was curious about this time? And what I really had come up for me this last couple weeks was the concept of being called too sensitive. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever been called that or had that shared or said about you. And actually, you could be just too something. I have a friend who was telling me the other day that they were always told they were too much. And, so we could look at this with all different, you could be too weird, you could be too angry, you could be too emotional, you could be too sensitive, you could be too whatever. And, a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is going to be applicable to all those different things. And the one that I really do want to focus a little bit more on is the concept of being too sensitive, just because that's a really big reference point of where I can come from. And, what I really noticed too is that if you're a person who does not have a strong sense of self, whatever anyone says about you, whether it is true or not, can totally throw you off if you don't have that sense of yourself. So having a sense of yourself is just invaluable. So even though I've been told, and I was told for years, that I was too sensitive, like kind of too emotional, in that sort of sense, with me not having a strong sense of self, I just believed what they told me. And yes, they were correct. And I've actually discovered, which is really, really fascinating. And so with whatever to something that you have been called, I'd love to invite you to a possibility of what is right about that. Like if you've been too angry, what's right about that? If you've been too sensitive, what is right about that? If you've been too much, what is right about that? And I know for myself, with being too sensitive and having been invited to the possibility of there's something being right about that, because when I first heard that there could possibly be something right about that, I was like, what? I've only known it to be a bad thing. So you're going to have to say more or sell me on it, because my train of thought, my history pretty much tells me that this is not a great thing. And so, as I talked about in the last couple shows about the heavy and light, this is one of those areas that I played with. What was light for me was true for me, and what was heavy for me was a lie for me. And so with these subjects of like even being too sensitive, so is that true? So I'd ask myself, so truth, am I too sensitive? And I actually get that as heavy. Now, am I very sensitive? Now that is really, really light. Like, wow. Okay, I just kind of fried myself with that. Like in the fact that I am very sensitive. I am very, very aware. And I'm actually just really acknowledging that. Oh, here comes one of those processing yawns. Moving the energy. It's so funny how when we acknowledge things sometimes, like it actually creates more space in our body and in our lives and our futures. So, um, if I asked myself, like, truth is my sensitivity or wrongness, I get that is heavy. Truth is my sensitivity, a capacity. And I get that is really, really light. Now, again, when I first heard this, I was like, how can being too sensitive, as others people would tell me, how could that be a gift? Like, I just make other people uncomfortable, which people is really getting to the heart of the matter with this, is that how much are these two somethings what creates discomfort in other people's worlds? It's either something they're not familiar with, something that they're triggered by. It could be something that they just hate about themselves, and you being too sensitive, and they don't want to be sensitive because sensitivity was made wrongness in their world. Like, I mean, most of us, it was. Because that's just where people came from, like, before. And so looking at this like, what if those two somethings that people call us, like, can we be that? Can we be angry? Yes. Can we be sensitive? Yes. Can we be emotional? Yes. Can we be too much? Yes. And we need to, like, invite ourselves and learn to check in about, number one, what's right about this. Number two, is this actually a problem? And it is not a one size fits all. Like, there are subjects that I am what someone would call too sensitive about. But then in another area, I'm not sensitive enough. So, it's really like, what I've learned is that we've very much tried to fit ourselves into boxes so that we can try and understand things. So you're a girl, you're a teenager, you're a husband. Husbands are assholes. Wives are emotional. Wives are demanding. Teenagers are difficult. People that are too or too sensitive are like, that's wrong. Like, we've tried to put these things into these boxes so that we can try and figure it out, conclude, and then have it be an answer. And then we can just sort of have it be let go of and over. And I've discovered that life is actually not that way. And when we fight, actually what is this evolving, ever-moving, angry, loving, fun, joyful, tired, cranky, sensitive, too much, is all a part of what creates the flavor. Like, do you notice the world we live in is very much like, let's try and rule. Let's rule this, let's rule this, let's rule this, let's try and protect this, let's try and stop that, let's not allow that to happen. And come on, guys, like, do you notice the lack of freedom in it? So if you've got someone like myself who is considered too sensitive, or highly aware, as I know myself to be now, highly aware of the crap that goes on. I just got to be careful not to get swept up into it. But if I'm so highly aware of something, that is not wrong. That's an invitation. It's actually something that does create a lot of discomfort in a lot of people's worlds. And what's right about me creating a lot of discomfort in other people's worlds? Like, it's funny because I kind of looked at this. It almost doesn't sound like a flattering thing, yet I just, for lack of a better way of explaining it right now, I feel almost in a way, like, as a person who's as sensitive and aware as I am, that I'm almost like a bottom feeder. So you got a fish tank, and most people are floating in the middle, kind of up towards the top and floating in the middle. And I'm down at the bottom saying, you guys, it's really dirty down here. And everybody else is like, well, I don't see it. And people at the top, they're like, oh, it looks great to me. And then People in the middle are just sort of like, yeah, maybe, but I don't really want to go down there. It looks dark. It looks scary. And it's actually just different. And it's actually just uncomfortable. And I wonder if we could create something different with finding out what these different things are by sitting with them, with being present with them, with inviting ourselves to be like, okay, so too sensitive. Is it actually a wrongness? What would be right about it? And this is what I love. I love to ask the universe. I'll say, hey, universe, if there's something right about me being this sensitive or this aware, which is too much for a lot of people, and even myself at times, what would be right about it? What is right about this? And what I've discovered through asking that question is I've been given the gift of awareness around myself that I'm a person who calls out things or is aware of things. I may or may not call them out. Might be my place, might not be my place. I ask a question around that. But I look at what I'm aware of and almost like going, when people are like, oh, things are just, our family is just really, really great. And then you actually look at it and it's actually not. And it's not wrong or right, like whether your family's great or not. But it's like, it's that pretending like everything's okay when it's not, and I got to tell you honestly, I got really sick and I didn't like that. And it was when I tried everything that I thought that I should or could, and it didn't change, or it would only change a little bit. It wasn't really until I started to look at what was right about me and what was right about being sick and what was right about being too sensitive and what was right about the anger that I was experiencing and aware of in my world. And when I started to look at what was right about all of it, it was then that things started to unfold and started to show me even more like the gift that I am, the gift and contribution I am to this planet, to my family, to myself. And it's been a real eye-opening experience. So, I'd love you to look at those areas in your life. Like, what have people called you? Even have you been accused of being too happy? Oh, you Pollyanna, you. Like, what is right about that? And, so many of us shy away from the beauty and the difference that we be by allowing other people's judgment and or discomfort with who we are and how we show up. And so for me, I've been really aware of other people's discomfort and not knowing what that was, that sensitivity and awareness of their discomfort. I thought that was more wrong about me rather than right. And of course, not having tools of knowing what to do with it, it sometimes became a bit of a train wreck. So I was on Facebook yesterday, and Kerwin Ray, who is from Australia, he does speaking engagements and stuff like that. He put this thing on Facebook saying what to do when your child has a meltdown. So, this is when someone is something of too much. It just feels important to share this. So, he says that number one, what to do when your child has a meltdown. Understand that your child feels unsafe. Number two, learn how to suffer in the moment and just be present with your child. Number three, create a safe environment where they can express themselves. And number four, stay calm, hold them to reassure them that everything's okay. Now, this is his suggestion. And I just wonder when any of us are that too much, whether we're too angry or too upset or we're too sad or we're too sensitive for anyone else, and we start to feel judgment about ourselves with it. I wonder if we actually stopped and did this with ourselves, understood that we feel unsafe or uncomfortable with this situation, learn how to be present with our own suffering and just be present with ourselves? Can we create a safe environment where we can express ourselves, our true selves, to ourselves? And then stay calm and reassure ourselves that everything is going to be okay. I just really found this really beautiful because as a person who was, teased, made fun of, criticized, judged for being too sensitive, this would have really contributed to me. And this is actually what I choose for myself now. I no longer see my sensitivity as a wrongness. I might slip sometimes, like if someone calls me on it or says something in reference to it, I might still find threads of where I start to go down the rabbit hole with it. But then I turn around now and I'm like, no, this is what's right about me. What is right about this situation that I'm not allowing myself to acknowledge? So anyways, just kind of touching on this subject, you guys play with it, see how it works for you. I'm really grateful for you listening. Have an amazing day. And I wonder how much you could love all of that about you. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about this on tomorrow's show. So big hugs to you guys. Take care.